Have you ever noticed that when you or someone you're watching play Pokemon, you just give them genders? He's using Brick Break, she's a normal type, and he's swapping in, when that one doesn't even have a gender. It's a very normal thing, probably subconscious for most, but it's become a fixation of mine because I realize I do it, and I'm picky on some of them. But I've also noticed Pokemon gender as a whole is a pretty untouched topic, so I decided to make a video on it. Originally, this was going to be multiple shorts, but that would look obsessive. I already made a video with This Is the Team, so it's just one big video to get this all out. Today, I will be the Pokemon professor of gender, and you will be my therapist. I want to start with when a Pokemon's gender has lore, because I could start with a more well-known example, but really I want to talk about the man responsible. My favorite French danger noodle husband, Serperior. You may view his elegance and pretty face and view him as feminine. So this is your fault? How can you sleep or live with yourself? First, Ken Sugimori stated Lady Oscar from Rose of Versailles as an influence for Serperior's design. A woman, yes, but one raised as a man, eventually growing into a character that embodies both traits, making her gender-defying, if anything. Also, the interview says a European knight like Lady Oscar, not that he is Lady Oscar. So no matter what, we have a neutral base. More obviously, at least to me before any research, is that Serperior is based on kings of France, specifically King Louis XIV, the Sun King. He wore ornate robes, cakey makeup, and loved high heels. But that wasn't feminine. As a king, elegance and flashiness were the peak of masculinity and dominance, condescendingly so. If you saw this guy in the wild, you knew he was superior to you. Another kingly inspiration, the Basilisk, a mythical serpent thing known for its killing glare, a glare which caused its name to mean King of Serpents. Serperior's Pokedex entries, every single one talks about his glare. This plus Serperior being a king and a serpent, it's not very subtle. The Violet Dex entry, ironically a game where a major trainer has a female Serperior as his ace, parrots the tale of the Basilisk to a T. Serperior's glare earning him the title Lord of the Forest. The use of the word Lord is interesting, as it can be male or neutral, but never female. Whenever Lord would be used in a female case, it would be Lady. Also in Pokemon Violet, there have been Terra Raid events for the mightiest starters, and anytime a starter is evidently more feminine, it gets locked to female. Serperior was male. To me, these are more representations of the species, unlike something like Pokepark 2, where, yes, the Serperior and Snivy in-game were female, but these are individuals and feel pretty arbitrary. This reads to me as they wanted a girl in the group for diversity and chose the pretty snake over the big pig with a flaming beard. Oshawott doesn't even realize Snivy's a girl initially. Also, Basilisk has basil in it, like the leaf. You're very clever, Pokemon. Also, basil comes from the Greek word for king. Also, Serperior's posture is comparable to a king cobra. How many times did I write the word king? Pokepark is irrelevant. That's why they killed it after 2 games. But I'm not done yet. On the topic of female Snivies, there's Ashes, of course. But Trip's Serperior was male, so was his Servine, serving as always. I think this clip of Trip's Servine is the most attention Servine's ever gotten. He has little high heels for feet. That could be a reference to Louis XIV's love of high heels, and no one brings it up. Finally, Serperior's Japanese name is Jalorda, which comes from Ja, snake, and Lord. I had this more naturally put in the short, but I'd be remiss not to bring it up because, well, 1, it's another use of the word Lord, but 2, it's just worth noting that there's a Pokemon named Snake Lord.
Who?
Speaking of Japanese names, we can talk about Gardevoir now. Gardevoir, whose original name is Sernite, not a very feminine name for the base of feminine Pokemon. Gardevoir is a much more talked about Pokemon. It's basically a requirement when talking about gendered designs. So I'm going to skip a few things. I won't be covering everything. But Gardevoir was intended to be A, humanoid, and B, represent chivalry. It can be any gender, and Gallade came later. However, I think even Pokemon themselves has kind of formed the opinion that one knight became the princess, although ironically better at dragon slaying, and one knight, well, he's just the knight. Gardevoir can, of course, still be male. I think it's dumb people act like she can't, but what makes this parallel Serperior is there are things that point to this being retconned to me. For one, Gardevoir was never masculine by design. Yes, Sir is in the name, but names are in reality a pretty small detail. Like how in real life, obviously not all ladybugs are ladies. I only brought up Snake Lord earlier because I thought it was funny and because the in-universe encyclopedia used Lord as a title rather than species name. What really matters is that Gardevoir is a knight. and that's in the design. Female knights exist, although in real life they weren't actually called knights, but you know, Joan of Arc is a good example. But then the Mega. Gardevoir goes from having something that could be taken as a night skirt that has like 50 names, to now having a straight up ball gown. Or a funeral gown. Later Pokedex entries, like the one in PLA, even for base Gardevoir, say it has a dress reminiscent of ladies of nobility. So yeah, nowadays, even officially, it's seen more as a royal or aristocratic lady than a knight. But what really does it for me is Wally. In Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, Wally has a male Gardevoir. In the remakes, it was changed to a Gallade, and every subsequent appearance followed. Even the poor guy's ancestors were forced to conform. And in fact, nobody has had a male Gardevoir since the introduction of Gallade. Now for some hypocrisy. My other husband, Delphox, will always be male to me, to personal connections, which is a notable thing in all this, I suppose. But Delphox is based on the Delphic Oracle, who is female. Still, I want to point out, this is a wizard robe, not a dress. I saw that far too many times. Also, if you look at Delphox's chest, it's very flat and almost sturdy looking. Don't look at me like that. Look at Salazzle. Pokemon is not afraid of curvature. Because inspirations are clearly ignored, I have kind of just chalked up Delphox's feminine view to Braixen being more popular, and Braixen is more visually feminine. Sorry for the interruption when there's about to be another, but while making this video, Delphox got their Mega revealed, which was inevitable, and because I'm selfish, the one thing I wanted was for Delphox to get a wizard beard, which is obviously such a stretch. We just established Delphox is feminine. I was a ghost. I was alone. Why would they give a feminine Pokemon a beard? I don't know, but they did it. And it has my color scheme. I know the shiny was already running purple, but now it's the base. This is my Pokemon. They're gonna put me in Masters with this guy. I felt so vindicated. It's way better than the fan designs. It's locked behind ranked play. You may have noticed I've only talked about feminine Pokemon so far. One I think is Ron, one that has a story behind it, and one that I will be wrong about for the narrative. I'll actually throw Primarina in the I'm wrong category too. I haven't talked about game mechanics yet, but that gender ratio's canon to me. Arceus makes no mistakes. It also means my 3 favorite starters are in this video. I want to clear up that I don't just like femboys. For Serperior to be a femboy, he'd have to be a femme, and he's not feminine. He's French. You know, how's Primarina was male in Sun and Moon, but made female in Ultra Sun and Moon? That's 2 green-haired rivals with forced conformity. I can see perks to how in newer games the rival will have the starter weak against you, and the person who gave you the starters has the one strong against you in an endgame fight. But Gen 7 was a terrible time to start this. Hau should definitely get Decidueye because of the hair. Kukui should get Incineroar because Wrestler. But there's no combo to get that. In Pokemon Masters, Hau is just denied a starter, and both protagonists seem to be canon. Celine having Decidueye, Kukui has Incineroar anyways, and Elio has Primarina, who is male, that's where I was going with this, because the starter's gender tends to match the protagonist. So they went through all those hoops to make male Primarina canon. But an exception that I found is that Serena has a male Delphox. That's my goat, Serena. And Wally has his Gardevoir back, and it's shiny, like how we can get a shiny one in Gen 3. Gosh, Masters is great. Get away from them, you fraud! Right, masculine Pokemon, or Pokemon seen as male. I avoid them because they aren't interesting. A lot are obvious. Machamp is a buff shirtless man with a dominantly male ratio. How am I going to argue with him? If I called him feminine, probably beat me up. Since I'm going more looks and vibes wise now, I can say Blaziken, Cinderace, Lucario, they are all really pretty androgynous designs, but they're popular with the guys, and male pronouns just seem to be the default for a lot of people. Maybe bad examples because they're fighting type, well, fighting type adjacent. Not a very feminine type. It's literally just me and Xiao. But still, plenty of Pokemon get called he and no one really bats an eye. I couldn't for the life of me find a masculine Pokemon that I thought the contrary like Serperior. Only ever Pokemon I could take as androgynous. Although I do kind of want to note Chestnut. The Kalos starters are right there with the Kanto starters and consistently showing who gets who. Shauna getting Chestnut and she gets a female starter. And I can add more to this. The Chestnut in the Mega trailer was female, and Gita's Chestnut is female. No one has had a male Chestnut. I think if Primarina's the femboy starter, it's fair to call Chestnut the tomboy starter. In the manga, Serena does get Greninja, but Shauna doesn't get Delphox. She has a Furfu named Furry, which is a major trait of Delphox's. Who does get a Delphox in the manga, actually? Oh my god. And yeah, this androgyny thing applies to feminine Pokemon as well, mainly just cute, elegant ones. Two that stood out to me were Goodra and Eevee, who are both just cute, soft goobers, and those traits are automatically attributed as female, which is apparently not a mindset I like. But dude, I went down this whole rabbit hole of a guy going on like every form site imaginable, insisting Goodra should be female only, and I'm like, is this how I sound with Serperior? No, I validated myself with research. I think that guy just had feelings for Goodra. And like, I have feelings for Serperior, but like, we're just married. We don't do anything. And Eevee, I'm talking Eevee, the small brown fox. Evolutions, I would say, are a perfect even split of feminine and not. Eevee's just a fox. If I want to really get into headcanon territory, there is something I cooked up that involves calling a masculine Pokemon female, but it also involves calling another feminine Pokemon male. Zekrom was made masculine, Reshiram was made feminine to contrast. Kyurem is a non-binary icon. I used to call them all he. They're all the same Pokemon. I figured they should share a gender, and Reshiram is outnumbered. I learned in Yin and Yang, Yin is female, while Yang is male. This contrasts with how Reshiram and Zekrom are, the white one being feminine and the black one being masculine. This is kind of cool, actually, as Yin and Yang is about contrast, so why not add another layer and say Zekrom looks masculine but is female, Reshiram looks feminine but is male, and Kyurem is still a non-binary icon. Lightning round. Birds. People shocked that Pheasantipity is male. This is how birds are. There's already another pheasant Pokemon who shows this. In that same gen is another bird Pokemon, where the male-only one is colorful and patriotic, while the female is drab and deadly looking. Real-life eagles and vultures don't have much dimorphism, but in the Pokemon world, these two are counterparts, so even by Pokemon logic, birds are birds. Back to Gen 9, Quaquaval. Peacocks are like the bird for flashy males, so an overly flamboyant duck adopting peacock elements is pretty genius. Lycia's Altaria, aka the one in the beauty contest, is male, because again, male birds are flashy. Out of the legendary birds, Articuno's probably the only male, which actually makes sense given how zesty the Galar one is. These three should start a band. Some Pokemon look different depending on their gender. Some connect to nature, like the aforementioned Unpheasant. Some have different stats, like Indeedee. Some are Milotic. Milotic's name in nearly every language, as well as its old evolution method, are based on a statue that represents beauty and femininity. So when they change it up for the male, it literally just has shorter hair. That's like if Lopunny just had their ear fluff shaved. Why bother? You've lessened the design. Roserade's a Pokemon I saw differing takes on. Some see it feminine, like a ballroom dancer, or masculine, like a charming thief or conniving matador type. But Roserade does actually change depending on its gender. The cape slightly changes. Okay, these suck. I'm gonna boycott gender for a bit. Genderless Pokemon. As alluded to in the intro, as well as the androgyny talk, most of them are kind of just called he. Some make sense. Metagross is a buff metal spider whose mega grows a spike goatee, but as it stands, it's the only genderless pseudo-legendary. Even though Goodra should be too, slugs are actually hermaphrodites, so don't tell Goodra guy. Genderless Pokemon still do have some interesting things about them, or rather not about them. For example, Kling, the gears, do not have a gender. Makes sense. But same gen, Vanillux, the ice cream is gendered. Phalanx and Mousehold don't have genders, likely due to being multiple beings, but Spiritomb is 108 beings. Is it the rock's gender? Are all the spirits in a Spiritomb the same gender? Do they vote? I don't know. But Aegislash is a spirit, just one, possessing a sword, has a gender. Sinistea is a spirit possessing tea. They just didn't feel like it. For gender ratios, I didn't do much research on, but I figured I'd mention them. Starters, of course, have a whopping 87% male ratio, which is mostly whatever. I wouldn't say starters were consistently gendered until Gen 4, with Infernape obviously being Sun Wukong, and Empoleon being a Napoleon Bonaparte and Poseidon fusion, all of whom being male. I saw Empoleon get called the feminine starter of Gen 4 a couple times, by the way. I'm not explaining who Napoleon is, that one's just on you. Gen 5 also has all blatantly masculine starters, as established, but then Gen 6 had Delphox, who is feminine, 7 had Primarina, 8 went back to androgyny, and 9 had Meowscarada. so it became awkward. You're a coward. Then Relicanth has this ratio. What am I supposed to say? It's Relicanth. Alakazam shares a ratio with Machamp. I don't think he's the peak of masculinity or anything. His mustache could very easily be whiskers. The Mega gave him a beard, but that was after. Why do so many Megas grow beards? Famously, Azurill has a dominantly female ratio, while Meryl does not, which would cause 1 in 3 female Azurills to change gender upon evolving. This was up until Gen 6, which is really weird timing. This seems like the gen to make it a feature, not remove it. The rest of the dominantly female ratioed Pokemon makes sense though. Except Oricorio. You know, we talked about birds earlier, and the male style, the base one, even has the stripes of a male honeycreeper. So I don't know what's going on there. There's Pokemon guaranteed to be a gender, a lot more females than males, and some are less feminine than feminine Pokemon that can be male. Like, Alcremie is Cake. Why do both Cake and Ice Cream have genders, but Cake can only be a girl? Alcremie's from Gen 8, and so is Grimmsnarl. Same problem. There's more masculine Pokemon. Keep in mind, a lot of that muscle is just hair. He could be a counterpart to female-only Hatterene. Most male-onlys are counterparts, actually. That's probably why they're harder to remember. Personally, I would group Grimmsnarl, Hatterene, and Rapidash. They're all fairy-type fairy tale creatures. It's one of my favorite groups in Pokemon, but Rapidash is 50-50, so you know what that means. The 50-50 ratio is boring. You could probably figure it's 90% of Pokemon. Some masculine and feminine Pokemon are more so than ones with special ratios, but one of the only interesting 50-50 Pokemon is Terapagos, who is 50-50, but will only be male. Scarlet and Violet are unpredictable, so is it meant to be male only, but technically isn't? Or is it meant to be either, but isn't? I don't know. Legendary Pokemon are stupid with gender. Transition. Most legendary Pokemon are gender unknown, which is technically the same as genderless, but I like the phrasing more here because legendary Pokemon are usually portrayed as more of individuals. So that makes them the most open to headcanon shenanigans like earlier. Like, Giratina is very unsubtly based on Lucifer, but their name's Tina. So I headcanon that Giratina is male, but has a female voice. Just oddly fits their aesthetic, in my opinion. I guess legendary Pokemon headcanons are where I give feminine traits to masculine Pokemon. But a couple of legendary Pokemon actually use gendered terms. Mystery Dungeon throws around pronouns constantly, but even in the mainline games, you have Calyrex calling himself a king multiple times, but his gender is unknown. Its gender is unknown. Yet, Heatran and Terapagos again, Pokemon with questionable existence, Pokemon in deep, hard-to-reach places, not only have their genders known, but are known to be either Pokemon. There can only be so many icons. Urshifu is known to be any gender. I actually didn't know that before, but it makes sense. There's clearly multiple, and they interact frequently with humans. But then Mewtwo, a Pokemon made by humans, they don't know. Giovanni just forgot, I guess. Legendary Pokemon could honestly be a video or short on their own. I just want to highlight one more. Zacian. Zacian is canonically a sister, but she does not have a gender marker in-game. This comes back to bite them in Pokemon Unite, where she is labeled as male, because male is just the default. Pokemon Unite does not have visible genders outside of gender differences. However, every Pokemon in the game has a gender in the code. I couldn't find a source for this beyond the Pokemon Unite Reddit just talking about it, but apparently Gardevoir was originally male, and they changed her to be female, even though you can't tell. So apparently if the Pokemon itself has green hair, the curse will affect them. Also, Delphox is male. Just indulging myself. Look at his little top hat. It's custom made to fit his massive ears. It's adorable. So in conclusion, I am obsessive, but I'm not overthinking. Pokemon are not real animals. They are monsters with animalistic traits made by people. A creative team who can clearly have even something as small as gender in mind. And inspirations take effect. A Pokemon being elegant, not to be pretty, but in reference to historical masculine elegance. Even then, game mechanics, while inconsistent, may be taken into account. Some Pokemon warrant being genderless. Gears. And some Pokemon have to be a specific gender. Vespiquen wouldn't be the same Pokemon if her gender didn't matter, but even then, Volbeat probably would. And some Pokemon might even make more sense being genderless. But going for all Pokemon, they aren't individuals. They are a species. With my and many others' mixture of calling Pokemon he, she, it, and they, it is grammatically correct. But also boring. Still, by always calling Serperior he, am I really saying every Serperior in existence should be male and also marry me? Yes.